Hello, my name is Cheryl Schroeder. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a volunteer at the Cougar Conservancy. Thank you all for joining us at this event. A little housekeeping before we get started. Please be advised that only the hosts and panelists can turn their cameras on and use the microphone. So we ask that if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. We will try to get to everyone's questions at the end of our program. I would like to introduce our host, Korinna Domingo, pronouns she, her, hers. Korinna is the Cougar Conservancy's founder and director. She's a wildlife biologist from Los Angeles, California, USA. Before founding the Cougar Conservancy, she worked on a variety of wildlife projects in the field that include species such as Roosevelt elk, black bears, cougars, North American porcupines, and river otters. Korinna has worked throughout the Western U.S. to enhance human-cougar relationships through education, outreach, conflict management, and science-based policy. She works in collaboration with state and federal agencies, nonprofit organizations, and private partners to prevent, manage, and reduce human-cougar conflicts in California. Welcome, Korinna.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for that introduction. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our virtual event. Today, we're going to be discussing a topic that is so important to me, conservation art. Joining us to talk about this important topic is Daniela Barbani, pronouns she, her, hers. Daniela is a Los Angeles-based artist with a focus in printmaking. She obtained her MFA in printmaking from Cal State Long Beach in 2020 and her MA in printmaking from Cal State Northridge in 2017. Her current body of work, I'll Tell Them, I'll Remember You, serves as an education tool as well as a celebration of urban wildlife in LA, specifically the local mountain lion population. More importantly, it's also about those that have lost the fight. Printing on found materials such as road barricades and street signs, Daniela's work merges the natural and the man-made in order to increase awareness of the plight of urban mountain lions. Welcome, Daniela.
Hi, Korinna and Cheryl. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
We are lucky to have you. I'm so excited to talk about your art with you today. I'll be really honest with you. I don't know how I ended up finding your Instagram, but I came across it one day and it blew me. It really did. I'm not just saying this. It really blew me away. And one of my first questions was, who is this person and why don't I know them? But specifically what really impacted me is I remember sitting on your Instagram for a pretty long time and I was looking at your art, which is behind me as the virtual background. So let's just start with your current work, that I'll Tell Them, I'll Remember You. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'll Tell Them I'll Remember You was actually the title of my thesis exhibition at Cal State Long Beach that unfortunately, due to coronavirus, didn't get to happen. However, the work still exists for it. And so, it is still very much a real thing for me, even though I didn't get to show it. One of the main pieces of the show is your virtual background, which is my Dead End project. And that's kind of the basis for what inspired this whole project. And it is a massive 30-foot long piece. It takes up the whole wall in my studio and is definitely the main, I think, anchor point for this body of work.
When I first saw it, I was just blown away because obviously everyone knows, artwork is this vehicle to really inspire the public and get them involved in conservation issues. But to see something, in my opinion, so novel, the type of work that you were doing and you are doing as part of the I'll Tell Them, I'll Remember You is, something I've never seen before. I've never seen any artist kind of represent these, the various issues that mountain lions face like you had in this Dead End exhibition behind me. But before we get into that, I want to just kind of talk about, just generally, how you got into this work and what your key influences were in creating this work on urban wildlife.
Yeah, so I mean, if you know me, you know that I'm a huge animal lover. I always have been. And how it started was my parents actually live in the northern end of the San Fernando Valley in a canyon. And so growing up, they're still at that house today. And, growing up as a kid, having a big hill in the backyard, we would see wildlife coming through all the time, day and night. And eventually, my dad set up a critter cam to, record animals that are coming through. And I was just kind of amazed at the wildlife that was passing through, literally taking the same path, right? Like there would be a family of deer going by, and then maybe an hour later, a coyote, and then a skunk or a raccoon or whatever it might be. I just became really fascinated with it. And so I decided to start making art about it. And the first wildlife art that I made was like what I called backyard visitors. And it was all about those animals that were coming to visit, my backyard. It wasn't until I started school at Cal State Northridge that one of my professors was like, well, you know who P22 is, right? I was like, no, like P22, like I don't think I've heard of it. And she was like, oh my goodness, you have to look it up. And
when you look it up, it's a gun.
Yeah, I know, right? And I'm like, why is she telling me to look this up? Like, this is totally not my work at all. She's like, no, it's the famous Hollywood mountain lion that lives in LA. And I was just blown away at the fact that there are mountain lions within the city limits. Like I had never really, considered that. And, it's one of those things where you would see it on the news, but like for me, I didn't really pay much attention to it, or it would just be like a quick little snippet
Sure.
on TV. And it wasn't until she told me about it that I completely fell in love with
You
this.
were mesmerized by,
Yeah.
I think so many people are mesmerized by P22's story. And shout out to your dad, the fact that, you guys were living in this neighborhood that were, part of the foothills of a local mountain range, and the fact that he, was a part of getting you excited about urban wildlife is just really great to hear. What, if you don't mind me asking, what city or foothill area did you grow up in? Was it Altadena, Pasadena?
Porter Ranch.
Porter Ranch. Okay.
Or Northridge, for those that aren't familiar. So they're way at the very tip of it.
Gotcha.
It's basically the mountain range. On the other side is Santa Clarita area. So it's
Okay.
around. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, so how did this work end up coming to fruition for you? Because, you learn about P22 and then all of a sudden, I don't know, to me, you're just creating all of this amazing mountain lion art. So really, how did this work come, how did you manifest it?
So, I mean, when I first learned about P22, obviously I was really excited. And I was also learning about other animals that were, in neighborhoods like the bears in Monrovia. And specifically there is a bear that they nicknamed Meatball.
Yes, Meatball. Tell people who Meatball is, just really quickly.
Meatball was a bear who became famous because he was stealing, was it Trader Joe's meatballs?
Costco meatballs, yeah.
And I was just like, wow, there is a whole world out there that I just have not been paying attention to. And so, for a while I was making art about all these different animals, and I am a cat lover. So naturally I was drawn to the mountain lion, and just because it still to this day, it's just crazy to me that there is this mountain lion population that I had been driving by on the freeway and had no idea about. And so I had decided by the time that I ended at Cal State Northridge and started at Cal State Long Beach, that I wanted to spend these 3 years really focused on the LA mountain lions and really dive deep into their lives and to see what would come out of it from that. So
Yeah, I think that when people hear about P22's story, you know, Los Angeles is the only place besides Mumbai that has large cats, you know, existing on the landscape. And so it's one of the last strongholds in you know, a mega city. And so I love to hear that P22 inspired you on this journey because, and I think he's inspired so many other people. When I first learned about his journey as well, it really was a vehicle for me because, like you, driving on the freeway, I didn't really know there was big cats up in the mountains. You know, I always thought when I got into conservation, that I would be doing big cat conservation work in other countries, you know, and not necessarily doing big cat work here. And so, yeah, it's really been an interesting journey. Let's talk about, you know, I'd like to show on the screen some of the different pieces of art that you've created. And while we're doing that, I'd like for you to kind of explain to me the materials that you use, because obviously, you know, it doesn't seem to me like you're using some like traditional materials. So let's talk a little bit about the mediums.
Yeah, of course. So I am a printmaker. For those that don't know what printmaking is, a lot of people, when they hear printmaking, they think, oh, like digital work on the computer that you're printing out, and not necessarily. Specifically, what I do is called relief printmaking. So if you think about like Japanese woodcut, that's printmaking. And so with relief, what I'm basically doing is I'm creating an image on a surface, whether that's wood, a piece of linoleum, it could be a piece of rubber. And then I am actually carving out the image with a set of carving tools. And so I'm literally creating a raised relief. So that's why it's called relief printmaking. And that raised surface takes ink, and then you traditionally would print that with paper through a press. But I kind of wanted to break out of the tradition of printmaking and print on some materials that are not designed to take ink. And it's been really fun experimenting. And I think there's something really interesting about taking such a traditional method of art making and merging it with these man-made materials, because these are two things that are not designed to fit together.
Right.
And it kind of fit with the concept of these animals that are being forced, you know, together with humans in these tight spaces that aren't merging well. So it kind of just made sense to me to break away from paper and just print on whatever materials I could get my hands on.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I love that you told us that background, because I didn't necessarily think of the merging in that way. So that's great to hear kind of where that came from. And, you know, so what are some of the materials? So you explained, you know, wood and how you use that for the printmaking, but also some of the things that you've actually done your work on. So for example, my virtual background obviously is a sign, a road sign, but tell us a little bit about the other pieces.
Yeah, so how it actually started was, I feel like I've become quite a hoarder now of what I like to call, I call it street memorabilia, but it's really like trash and like disposed construction materials. And I had been on a walk with my mom one evening, and we were at the edge of the canyon, and I had seen that they had been doing a lot of housing development, which is really sad to see, like leveling mountains and stuff. And the construction company was dumping these trashed barricades down the side of the canyon. And
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's just like, it made me so angry. And so when I say barricade, I mean those A-frames, signs that you see everywhere that have the orange and white striped panels on them. Mm-hmm. So I managed to dig out 2 of them that were down the embankment. I couldn't get all of them because I didn't want to slip and fall to my death, you know, but my mom and I, who is my partner in crime, dragged out 2 of these barricade pieces, called my dad to come bring the car around so we can load it into the car. And at that point, I didn't know what I was going to be doing with it. I'm like, what? My dad's like, what are you doing with this trash? Like, are you actually going to use it? I'm like, I don't know. Just let me think about it. Took the pieces apart, drove it back down to my studio. And actually, they sat in my studio for quite a while until I realized that I could actually potentially print on this. You know, I have these great wood pieces that have this reflective material on it. How awesome would it be to print on it? And that's kind of how it started. I actually have a small piece here for an example. This was one of the first ones that I did. It's 2 barricade pieces, and the wood is like absolutely rotted, and it's thrashed. And you know, to be able to print on this, it has to run through a printing press. And I was like, I am for sure going to get in trouble. I break something, it's on me to fix it. So I waited until everyone was gone out of the print shop here at school, and like snuck in, and I'm like, let me just print it really quick. And it ended up being like kind of amazing. And
it really is. The fact that you repurposed like trash like that into something that is, to me, so meaningful is just so cool that you're thinking outside of the box and using that stuff. I would have never thought that I'd ever see mountain lion art on a barricade.
Well, and like these are materials that are so recognizable. Like we see this stuff everywhere, especially with all of the development that's been going on lately.
Absolutely.
They're everywhere. And I mean, I make sure that I'm not taking materials that are in use, like, but a lot of these companies, you know, either a car runs it over or they just get worn out from the weather. And we all know the city takes a really long time to clean up some of this stuff. So I, you know, kind of acted as like a cleanup crew and went around with my car and just like was picking up materials, and because I knew I was going to use them in some way or another.
That's awesome. That's really great. Your family seems cool. Your mom too. So I guess that's a great kind of segue to the Dead End series. So I want to talk about that because that's, I think, one of my favorite pieces of yours. And so let's go ahead. I'm going to throw up the video of a video that was on your social media page. And can you explain to me what you're doing here?
Yes. So I'm currently, as you can see in like my background too, all of the dead end signs are currently up on the wall, and I had just nailed every sign up on my wall, and this was back in February. And so a little background really quick, each sign, I made a sign for each collared and tracked mountain lion. And the ones that are flipped forward that say dead end are mountain lions that have died. And so literally, one day I had just finished nailing up all of the signs, and then the news broke that P56 had died. And not only had P56 died, it was actually due to depredation law. So someone was issued a permit to shoot and kill P56. And so I was in my studio at that time when I found out, and I was like, I have to flip the sign now for P56, because every time I find out about a mountain lion that has passed away, I flip its sign. And this was going to be the first sign that I actually flipped in real time. And so
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a really like morbid and sad environment in my studio when that happened, because I was alone, and I'm like, you know what, I just want to record this because I feel like it's very significant for me.
Yeah. And so just for the viewers, so the background, when Daniela said that the lions that were collared as part of the Santa Monica Mountains National Park study. So the National Park Service has been studying mountain lions in the Santa Monica Range and, you know, the surrounding area for a very long time now. And so the first animal they ever collared was a male, and he was named P1, P standing for Puma, because the mountain lion's scientific name is Puma concolor. And so P56 was the 56th Puma that had been collared as part of this national park study. And Daniela, you talked a little bit about the depredation and how P56 died. So for those of you who weren't following the story, P56 was legally killed on a depredation permit. Depredation is basically when a mountain lion predates on anything from, a chicken to someone's, domestic house cat, all the way up to like sheep and goats. And so under Proposition 117, which is the law that made mountain lions a specially protected mammal in the state of California, it was written into the policy, into the proposition that you could kill a mountain lion if it took your property, and your property can be defined as a chicken, goat, etc. And so P56 was legally killed under this system. And this was one of the first mountain lions that had been legally killed under a depredation permit as in this study area as part of this study. So just a little background for the audience.
Yeah, and wasn't P56 was also like only one of 2 males, right, that had been collared. I think I remember reading that, like he was only one of 2 males that they were tracking in this area. So it was quite a big deal that, it had to end that way, unfortunately. It's just unfortunate all the way around,
Yeah. So they, the National Park Service has had, multiple cats that are collared in this area, but of course, there's natural death, and then there's, death that are, from anthropogenic causes. So there had been some, road strikes, some road fatalities, and the Woolsey fire had happened. And so we had lost some cats to the fire. And then we had lost P38. He was recently poached in that area. And so to lose then P56, and he was one of only few males that they had collared, it was a big deal. And actually, I don't know if you and I have discussed this before, and that's why this video resonated with me so much, is that kind of the birth of Cougar Conservancy, because this happened back in January of 2020, that actually really propelled me to file for nonprofit status and create my own organization, because I saw that there was a critical need to have more resources for conflict management and resolution on the landscape in California in general, but especially for these small isolated populations where any death of one lion can have a significant impact on that population, especially considering how hemmed in they are by freeways and urban development.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like for me, the act of actually flipping the sign made it all the more real, and which sounds kind of crazy because I've made so many signs, I've got 80 of them, and yet like the act of actually then having to go and flip that sign for P56 was just like, oh, it was such a powerful moment for me. And it's just like, it brought everything into a reality. Like this is happening, literally this is happening in this moment right now. So yeah, I'm really glad that I documented it. I wasn't sure if I was going to do anything with the video. It was mainly for me, but I'm like, you know what, I'm going to post it because it is an important moment for me, and I want to share it with everyone else.
Yeah. I don't often, cry, when I hear of a local mountain lion that's hit on the freeway. Doing this work, you kind of get hardened in a way, but, through our work at Cougar Conservancy, we work on cases with individual lions. And it just so happened that I had worked on a case with P56 a few years back where he did, kill a resident's domestic animals. And at the time, we were able to mitigate that situation, but I wasn't there this last time. I had actually just transitioned positions, and I was working at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County, and I found out that a lion that I had, a case I had worked on had actually been killed on a depredation permit. And I just, I kept it together all day at work, and I went in my car and I cried on the freeway in downtown LA because I felt like I had really failed. I felt like I knew I wasn't responsible for the death of P56, but I felt really bad that I wasn't there to potentially help him again. And so that's why that video, to me, I really connected with it, because that was basically the birth of Cougar Conservancy. I went and filed for nonprofit status immediately after that happened.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, that's crazy to have like that connection though. Like that's the sign that I chose to flip. And then that's the one, you know, I don't know. That's a pretty crazy coincidence.
And they're all individuals, right? I mean, we as scientists, of course, we care about populations and genetic health and and making sure that these animals exist, in perpetuity, not only because they deserve to exist, but also for future generations of, our kids and to know that mountain lions exist in Los Angeles. But yeah, I mean, they're all individuals, and we can get really desensitized by hearing it in the media that, oh, this one died of rodenticides, this one died of that. But the fact that you have this setup and that every single one of those stories that you flipped over, they all have a story, some longer than others, right? Depending on how long of lives they lived, how many kittens they had. But at the end of the day, they are individuals. And, as a scientist, I care about populations, but I also care about individuals. And P56 was a lion that I really came to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, so because each sign has the same portrait on it, right? But like you said, each mountain lion has its own story. I had developed a little zine, or like a little booklet that's a companion to this piece that does have the individual profile of each mountain lion. And so that does make it a little bit more personal. But for me, this was a lot about how the public views these animals and how they're all kind of just lumped together and they're all viewed as the same. And,
right.
Like there's that 2-minute spot on the news about it, and then that's it. And you don't really get to learn about what happened, or, did this mountain lion have kittens or not? Like, what's the lineage there? You don't learn any of that. And so for me, it was important to do this really like cold and clinical take of how the mountain lion is portrayed. And so that's why each one has the exact same portrait with its tag number.
Oh, wow. Wow. That like gave me goosebumps. Yeah. That's so interesting. And again, like the the value of art and storytelling is so important, because otherwise it is, right? It's just this, unison, monotonous thing that we hear about. And just like with coronavirus, we're getting desensitized with the statistics. And I mean, it happens. We're bombarded with so much information every day. And so, yeah, I mean, accolades to your piece. I can look at, individual, because I know the population so well, like I can look at individual dead end signs and look and be like, this lion died from rodenticides, this lion died from fire. So, you can also look at like how many of those have been flipped due to human causes.
Yeah.
And so I just think that's such a powerful piece. And I'm sorry that you weren't able to exhibit this due to COVID. And I'm glad that we're able to show everybody now, because I just think it's such an important exhibit. So.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully one day it will be exhibited somewhere. I am super grateful for this opportunity. It's such a big piece that like seeing it on Zoom or on a screen just doesn't do it justice, because it definitely fully encompasses like your body when you're standing in front of it.
Right.
And just like seeing the sheer amount of signs on the wall is, I think, really eye-opening. Mm-hmm. But yeah, one day it will see the light of day.
I hope so. I hope one day we can drink wine and look at it together and exhibit it somewhere. But I do have a question though on, what are your requirements for flipping over one of the signs? So for example, I noticed that like, P45, his sign hasn't been flipped over yet. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, do you wait for National Park Service to like come out with a press release, or because we don't know what happened to P45, right? I had worked on that case. We had saved him from a depredation permit back in 2016. And, he had a life after that. And then the National Park Service, kind of lost track of him. His collar went dead. He's presumed to be, to not be alive anymore. But anyway, so what are your requirements for flipping them over?
Yeah, so I had actually, the Santa Monica National Park Service has a really extensive list of every profile, right, of outline. And I had gone through each one and wrote down, cause of death, if they're still alive, where their whereabouts. And so each one that has been flipped has been due to like things that we know, like rodenticides, crossing a freeway, poaching, interspecies conflict, stuff like that. But the ones that were either presumed dead or were their location is unknown whereabouts, I didn't flip the sign because I'm not like trying to be naive here, obviously, but I just didn't feel right flipping that sign quite yet,
Interesting.
We may never know, with some of these lions, but as of now, their signs aren't going to be flipped.
So maybe there's hope for P45 after all. Who knows?
Who knows?
You never know. These cats, they surprise me every day. The more you follow them, you're like, that would never happen, and it happens.
Right.
And so they're beautiful in that sense. They always keep you guessing. So let's talk a little bit more about another project. Let's talk a little bit about your gridlock project. Can you tell us about that one? We'll pop it up on the screen right now so everyone can see it as well.
Yeah. So Gridlocked ended up being my first video project that I ever created. And I actually spent like 6 months working on it. I feel apologies to all of my artist friends who I made watch over and over again because I edited this video so many times. I worked on it for a really long time. I'd never done any kind of video installation before or video editing before. So I really wanted to try and capture the viewpoint of a mountain lion that was trying to cross a busy freeway. And how that came to be was originally I had decided I wanted to carve out on a piece of linoleum a life-size mountain lion, and I wanted to print that. So it's about like 6 feet long, right?
Okay.
So I printed that out, and I ended up hanging the print on an overpass of a freeway near a site where a mountain lion had been hit by a car. And it was like the first time I had actually like put work outside before. I was super nervous. I'm like, can I get in trouble for doing this? I'm also terrified of heights. So like being up on an overpass, like holding a 6 foot long banner was like, oh my gosh, it was awful.
Imagine how the lions feel.
Exactly, right? So that's how it inspired it. And so I had put up this banner and again, made my mom drive me on the freeway so I can like video it, like going underneath. And then I had taken a video of it standing next to it with the freeway in the background, just to document that I had done it. And after watching that video, I was like, I might be onto something here. What if the artwork is actually the video itself, right? So I ended up taking that print and created a silhouette from it. And so that's the silhouette of the mountain lion that the video plays through. And
it goes from, tell us about the gradient too of the video.
So the video starts off actually in a very serene, natural canyon scene. There's no people around. It's very calm. There are birds. And slowly throughout the video, things start to merge and change and get a little twisted. And before you know it, the scene is subtly changing. And then all of a sudden there's an introduction of this noise that sounds an awful lot like cars. And then eventually it comes full force onto a view of the side of a busy, busy freeway. And that scene then gets more chaotic as the day goes on, and then it ends at a night scene on the side of the freeway with a shot of oncoming traffic and headlights, and that's how it culminates. And then the mountain lion eventually fades to black. And so that was actually an experience trying to get that footage recorded.
Did you have to, were you really, because to me watching it, like, I think that you nailed being in a lion's perspective. Is that what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I was on the side of a freeway. It was super scary. And I'm like, just like doing that alone, I was like, I don't even understand how it's physically possible, especially for the mountain lions that have successfully crossed.
Right.
I'm like, I couldn't even do it. Like it's insane. And so being there, filming it, especially at nighttime, that was the most scary because people can't see me, right, on the side of the road filming. And so it really put me into the point of view of the mountain lion and just like what it takes actually be able to cross this. And the fact that they have to cross this to get to the other side of their habitat is just, it's so sad, you know? And I really wanted to convey that in the video.
Yeah, I think that you did, and did it beautifully, you know, and it comes back around to really, you know, thinking about these animals also as individuals again, and trying to put yourself, you know, in their shoes, in their paws, in their perspectives. And, you know, what's the alternative of not crossing the road? You know, a lot of the animals that are going to disperse out of their natal range are going to be, you know, younger, less experienced, lions. And the alternative, you know, say for a male that's dispersing to try to find his own territory, the alternative is, you know, do I choose to go across the freeway and take this chance, or do I stay and potentially be killed by my father or another more experienced male or an older female, you know, due to you know, interspecific strife or conflict between mountain lions, so within a species, you know, is common. They're territorial. They, you know, they have their own areas, and they're self-regulating. And so, you know, if there's too many lions, they will kill each other. And so because of that self-regulating nature, you know, in an anthropogenic kind of scene like in Los Angeles, where there's road barriers, I mean, that dispersal is just so much more of a risk because of our 10, 12 lane freeways. And so, you know, maybe though, you know, dad is really scary, and that he or she's got to get out of there.
Yeah. And in fact, the original title for this piece was actually "Why Did the Mountain Lion Cross the Road?" And it didn't go over so well. A lot of people said it was like a little too punny.
Right.
But I was like legitimately like asking the question because I wanted people to think about why, you know, this animal was trying to cross a busy freeway. Because a lot of people are like, why would you do that? You know, but I'm like, there are valid reasons.
You know, even when you're trying not just to disperse away from your natal range to find your own territory, but these animals also have to be able to move, and the landscape's got to be somewhat permeable because they live on this landscape level. Mountain lions need a lot of space. And so I think about also being in their shoes when a fire occurs. You know, I think that there was some great videos on the news of like newscasters out there talking about the fire next to a mountainside, and there's rabbits behind them like coming down. But mountain lions don't have that option, right? I mean, they understand that they should be fearful of humans, and they are, and they choose to not be around us. They choose to select spaces that are away from us. And so it's not only like a gridlock to movement because of roads, but, well, it is, sorry, let me say that again. It's not just a barrier for roads to try to find your own territory. There's also barriers in trying to move in these spaces that are heavily occupied by humans or have large developments when these stochastic or random events occur, like the Woolsey fire. They don't have the option to come down into the city sidewalks because if they do, and sometimes they do, you know, they're seen in urban spaces, and you know, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife comes out and they handle the situation. They dart the animal and relocate it back to the mountainside. Yeah, I mean, I guess that was sort of a random thing, but it just got me thinking of like being in their perspective, and it's not just the males that are running away from the other males, but sometimes they're running away from fire. And females, you know, just on the last point, sorry, I'm on a roll. And females, you know, they can't move as fast, especially when it comes to, do they have dependent young, and how old is that dependent young? And it makes you think about, you know, how many don't make it out of a fire, and not just mountain lions, but, you know, other species as well.
Yeah,
so.
definitely. I mean, I think especially with the woolsey fire, like, I kid you not, right in front of me, I have the LA Times article pinned on my wall in my studio, and the photo is of a deer, and it's so tragic to me. And I feel like normally you wouldn't see images like this because they're very difficult to look at, of animals that didn't make it. But the LA Times chose to publish some of these photos. And I think it is really important to see how much that a fire like this can affect the wildlife.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's not all happy times. You know, nature's pretty freaking brutal. You know, and we don't always have to show that in our communication. We don't always have to show that in our science communication, but there is a place for it. And I really always appreciate photographers that do go out and cover that work, because not only is it hard for viewers to see, but it's also hard on that individual who covers, individuals who cover endangered species or research endangered species, or, you know, it takes a toll on us both professionally and personally, even though, you know, we deal with it, and everybody deals with it in their own way.
Do you recall, I forget which mountain lion it is, but it was like one of the first times that the Santa Monica National Park Service, on their Instagram, they had posted a photo of a mountain lion that had died due to rodenticides, and it was like a close-up shot of the body. Do you remember by any chance?
There's been a few, I don't know which one you're talking about specifically, which picture, because I've seen so many photos of the mountain lions that have been killed, but it may have been P30 or P34 where it actually was found, and when they hemorrhage, you know, they basically, you can open up a lion and they just will bleed out. They're literally bleeding internally because the anticoagulant rodenticides are a potassium inhibitor, and that's what helps with blood clotting. But I think it was P30 or P34. But yeah, I mean, very sad. Yeah. And since then, there's been even more. It's always difficult. I think that actually out of all of that National Park Service study, there's only been a few lions that National Park Service has said, oh no, this animal actually died of anticoagulant like intoxication. But of course, a lot of lions have been found, and then when they conduct the necropsy, they find that they have high levels of ARs or anticoagulant rodenticides. For example, P41, he was a lion living in the Verdugo Range. His body was found shortly after one of the fires had occurred there a few years ago. And then when they tested him, I think he had like over 4 ARs in his system. And so it's hard when they find the decomposed bodies, they can't always determine a cause of death. But yeah, like the statistic for mountain lions, California Department of Fish and Wildlife did a study recently, and it's an ongoing project where they take mountain lions that have, you know, been killed on depredation or found on the roadside, and they collect them, and they've collected them from every county almost, I think, in California. And they found that no matter if the lion lives like in the city or in the forest, I think over 90% of them all have ARs or multiple ARs in their system. And they've actually recently documented fetuses. So a few of the necropsied lions were pregnant, and the fetuses actually had levels of ARs in their system. So yeah, it's an issue, and a lot of the lions, you know, on your wall behind you, you know, had died with that in their system, and some of them died actually from the intoxication.
Yeah.
I would like to really talk about some of your other pieces too, the tagged pieces. Tell me a little bit about that. And I'm really glad that you have an image there of you for scale as well, because otherwise I'd have no idea how big this piece is.
Yeah, I wish I had that piece here, but it's actually, I recently disassembled. It's also a really massive, massive piece. It's 10 feet by 10 feet, and it is consistent of 80 GPS collars that I carved out of linoleum and printed on a material called housing wrap.
Mhm.
And housing wrap is basically what construction companies use when they're building homes. You'll see when the frames of the homes go up, it usually has this white plastic covering on it.
Yes, yes, I've definitely seen that.
Yes, so like to keep out moisture, and it's
Okay.
this is horrible plastic that you know is not gonna degrade over time. And so naturally I'm like, I want to print on it. And I got a whole bunch of it and decided I wanted to print 80 collars, because at that time I think there were 80 total that had been collared and tracked.
Okay.
And I, zip tied them together and basically created a door frame. And this piece was specific to the gallery that my show was going to be in, because it was going to act as the doorway that led into the video projection piece of Gridlocked. Yeah. So if you can imagine like a hallway, the video would have been at the end of the hallway, and then this doorway is what you would walk through to get to the video.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's why it's so big. And I decided I wanted to actually build a door frame for it out of 2x4s. And so I constructed this huge, huge door frame, and basically was going to wrap it as if I was a construction worker building a house.
Gotcha.
Putting up the housing wrap. And yeah, this is another piece that unfortunately I didn't get to see fully completed, but it is very, very big. Very, very big.
Wow. So I didn't know any of that background. And so you explaining that makes me so happy for so many reasons. But, because again, it's the storytelling ability with your exhibit. So the fact that we're literally at a time where we are in California specifically, especially in Southern California and along the Central Coast, at a point where we're either going to continue to develop and get rid of like regional connectivity in the state, right? So when you look at like the large scale, we're at a point where like we could save ourselves and keep that connectivity, or we're just gonna develop everything. And so obviously a lot of people who are watching are probably aware there is a petition to list mountain lions under the California Endangered Species Act right now. The petition is only for Southern and Central Coast mountain lions. And so it's mountain lions that Daniela has been talking about in the Santa Monica's, the Santa Ana's, the Eastern Peninsula Range, the coastal regions, because these lions are most at risk from extinction based on the latest science. And so that's going to be coming up in the next year. We'll keep you guys all updated on ways to get involved. But that exhibit with, the doorway and the fact that you use the housing wraps, I mean, I'm just blown away right now. I'm kind of speechless.
Thank you. Yeah, this piece was another one, just like the dead end signs, where there's just like the sheer number of collars is just something to experience, and I printed them in a gradient because I wanted to kind of tell maybe like a passing of time and how some of them are fading away. And I really wanted to make it something that the viewer had to physically pass through in order to get to the next room. I thought that was really important for me.
Yeah, as a scientist, I look at that and I'm like, that's a lot of money. Like, that's a lot of collars. That's so much money that's been spent to track mountain lions. And so it's pretty incredible, how much resources have been put into just studying the Santa Monica mountain lions and, you know, the surrounding ones. They've collared P41 and the Verdugos and some animals in the Simi Hills. And that's the thing, right, is that we can use our resources to collar these animals, to learn more about them. But if we don't do anything with the science, what we're doing is we're just documenting these animals' extinction. And so that's where conservation art and policy and science and all of these things come together and intersect so that we can tell these stories and tell these stories in a way that also resonate with certain people. Not everyone cares about scientific information and all of that. And so you can only, you know, you're not going to reach everyone with the same method. And so that's why your work is so important, and why it's so wonderful to talk to you about the background too, because looking at that online, I would have had no idea you did that with house wrap.
Yeah, I know it's hard to tell through a photo, but, and you know, it's funny, when I was working on this project, I wanted to see if I could actually get my hands on an actual collar to borrow for reference. And I emailed a whole bunch of people, and they were like, why do you want it? And I'm like, I'm an artist, I just want to reference it. And they were like, she's crazy, like these things cost a lot of money, no. And so I ended up going to the Natural History Museum because at the P22 exhibit,
nice,
there's a collar attached to the wall. So I like literally just went in and like just photographed it from every, you know, which angle. But even then, like being able to like hold it in my hands, like the one at the Natural History Museum, was just incredible. And I thought that if I was to ever get my hands on an actual one, I would probably cry because it would be like so symbolic, you know?
Well, that one is one that a lion wore, to my understanding. I don't remember what the exhibit says, but I'm so glad to hear that that exhibit actually helped you, because I love at that exhibit, there's a lot of things that you can actually touch and feel. And I just think that's so important. So the fact that you went there and used that to inform this piece of art is so awesome. Another random side note is it's not just the collar that's so expensive, but these things communicate a lot of times depending on what collar you have. They communicate with like iridium satellites up in space in like a geocentric orbit. And so like you're paying for the collar and like the medicine, the drugs, and the field crew to go out there and the trapping efforts, but you're also paying for it to like communicate with the satellite in space so we can know where mountain lions are going and what they're doing. Anyway, science is cool. I'm just geeking out on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, it couldn't hurt to ask, right? Like, I went out on a limb last year and I sent an email, I think, to Beth Pratt. Like, she doesn't even know who I am. I'm over here like, oh, I'm a huge fan of your book and your work. I've seen you at all the events. Do you like know where I can get my hands on one? And she was so nice. And she actually gave me the contact of somebody within the National Park Service, and then it got shut down. But I'm like, you know what? At least I tried.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So if there's one thing that you really want people to take away from your artwork, you know, what would that message be?
I think for me, it's like, I've never really been a person that is like standing on a soapbox, like trying to force my view down someone else's throat. But I would really want people just to start maybe paying attention more, and just from seeing my work, maybe they would feel inspired to learn more, or, you know, maybe feel called to action. One of the coolest things that somebody had said to me was actually a professor at Cal State Northridge, who, after seeing my work, just told me in passing that because of my work, he now, like when he sees the stories on the news, he's like super in tune to it and he pays attention. He's like thoroughly invested in it now. And that just meant so much to me, because that's all that I can hope for, is that, you know, by looking at my work, people now will be like, oh, wait, I remember seeing this girl's art. This is like the mountain lion that she was talking about on the news. And now people are more aware of it. And you know, I'm not saying that everybody now has to become an activist or to go out and do something, but if it can inspire you to do something, I think that I've done my job.
Yeah, and even just raising awareness, you know, maybe that one person, you know, they're more aware of mountain lions in the media, and then they talk to their family and their friends or their children about maybe even not mountain lions, maybe just nature in general and the value of nature. So I love that. I know that you definitely inspire me to think about mountain lions in a whole new way. So thank you for that. And for people listening, let us know, let them know where to find you. How can we learn more about your work and follow what you're up to?
Yes, so I am heavily plugged into social media, almost a little too much. But I am
I think we all are right now with COVID. It's
especially during this time. Yes, I'm going to use that as an excuse. I am on Instagram quite a bit. You can find me at Art in the Machine, altogether one word. My website is my name, DanielaBarbani.com. I also volunteer with an organization, Citizens for Los Angeles Wildlife, or they go by 𝐀𝐻. You can find them on Instagram too. I actually do their Instagram for them. But yeah, mainly like just find me on Insta. I'm always plugged into that, and I'm always posting things, almost too much, but you get to see a lot of behind the scenes practice, like with my work and stuff like that. So I would love it if you all reached out to me.
Well, thank you so much, Daniela, for being here and taking the time to speak with me. I'm glad that we were able to show and share people your work. I know that I was really happy to come across your stuff too. So I think that's about all the time we have, Daniela. I think we should move on. Let's take a look at our chat and go into our comments and go into the Q&A.
Sounds great.
All right. Hi, everybody. There's Daniela. You guys feel free. We're a small group today, and so we actually are giving you guys the opportunity, if you wanted to put your cameras on, put your mics on, you guys can totally interact with us during the Q&A and ask Daniela questions about her artwork. Just looking in the group, in the chat here to see if anybody asked any questions.
Don't be shy, don't bite.
I love your background too, Daniela. While we get some questions in, do you want to tell people what your background is?
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the end of the video, that I volunteer with an organization called 𝐀𝐻, and 𝐀𝐻 has a couple of wildlife cameras set up, and this one in particular is an amazing shot because in the background you can see the downtown LA skyline, and so this is an image of a bobcat that triggered the camera. And so there's all different types of animals that are passing through this area. It's just amazing to see. And on 𝐀𝐻's Instagram, which I dropped into the chat, you can actually go in and see some of those photos. Every Wednesday we're updating it with pics from our camera, so it's pretty exciting to see.
Yeah, I love that. 𝐀𝐻 is a great organization, Citizens for Los Angeles Wildlife. And I'm not sure if you and I have talked about this, Daniela, but Allison and I actually got our start at the same organization. So she also started at the Mountain Lion Foundation as well.
Oh, no way.
And then went on to create her own nonprofit. So we kind of have an interesting similarity as far as that goes.
Oh, that's so cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I have to comment here before the questions roll in. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you great.
Like you, Korinna, when I saw Daniela's art, I was like, oh, I was completely floored. I'm like, how do I not know this person? I need to know this person. And so I was kind of stalking her on Instagram going, hey. But you are, Daniela, my favorite conservation artist for sure. And I just love your body of work. I think it's so moving and so important. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
This was a great interview.
And Cheryl's an artist too, so you should go check out her Instagram page. She's really good too.
She is. We may have an event with Cheryl as well to talk about her artwork. It looks like we got a question here from May. So what is next? What projects are in the works and what materials are you looking at working with?
So that is the question. So, because I'm recently graduated, recently just moved out of my studio space, right? Huge studio. Now I'm in like a shoebox of an apartment, and printmaking is not something that you can do everywhere, but in a way you can. They're like workarounds for it, right? So I don't really have access to a big printing press, so I'm not, printing as big as I had been, but, I've done things like use my car to drive over a block to print it and see how that works. But currently, I've actually been making mini dead end signs. I actually have one right here with me.
Oh.
So the ones that are in your background right now, those are legit signs that, are, I guess, like authorized to be used out in the world, right? So instead, I'm kind of making my own homemade version with sheets of aluminum that I'm cutting. I had a whole bunch of reflective shading that was donated to me. And so here's a little one. If you can, I don't know if you can pick it up.
The virtual background.
Oh, the virtual background. You can't see it. It's on my Instagram.
There you go.
You can kind of see it.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they're small, and I can't quite get it, but yeah. So like every part of it is done by hand and printed that way. So it really has that handmade quality. And so I've been playing around with miniatures and, working at a smaller scale and still trying to convey, the importance of such a big topic, but maybe like on a smaller scale. So that's what I've been exploring right now.
Yeah, I love that, because those signs are big and maybe people don't have the space as well to put that in their office or at their house. And so I like the idea of the miniatures, and I'm interested to see if you're going to start getting into miniature stuff, considering the limitations of your workspace right now. So Rachel Fiddler said, thank you so much for a wonderful program. Great to learn about all the intersections of this work. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel's an educator at the museum, so I'm sure she was happy to hear about you using the collar to inform your, what's the name of that one exhibit?
The tagged piece, right?
The tags.
Yeah.
So let's see if we have any more questions. I know we're going over, it's 1:05. It's been over an hour-long program. Oh, here we go. Connor, hey Daniela, I'm wondering, how did you get started in making work in connection with conservation groups like 𝐀𝐻?
Good question. Also, Connor is an amazing conservation artist on the East Coast. You should go check out his work too. So when I was at Cal State Northridge, and my professor had told me about P22, and I was like trying to, learn more about it, I just Googled local nonprofits in my area. And I was looking for something small because I knew with a larger organization, it would be pretty hard to have that personal connection. And 𝐀𝐻 was actually the first group that popped up. I mean, it's right in the name, right? Citizens for Los Angeles Wildlife. That's basically like what I typed into the Google search bar. And so I filled out the little like volunteer thing on their website, and instantly Tony, who's, the head of it all, calls me on my phone and is super interested. And that was like 4 years ago. And since then, it's been an amazing experience. And I really think it's important that if you're going to be doing work of this kind, that you do get plugged in some way, because then we get to help each other out, right? I get to help volunteer, and in turn, I'm also learning all of this stuff that I wouldn't have access to on my own.
Yeah, totally. And thank you for the question, because I think that's so great. Even if you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, getting connected with your local nonprofit organizations is a great way to start, getting into advocacy work or restoration work or whatever it is that you're into. And so I love 𝐀𝐻. 𝐀𝐻's a community-based organization as well. So they serve a very specific community. So that's great that you found them. Okay, lots of questions coming in. Everybody's not shy now. So Melissa asked, what little things can we do to help with Mountain Lion Conservancy or animal conservation in general?
That might be for you, Korinna.
You want me to take that one?
Sure.
Yeah. There are so many things right now, and I don't know if you live, Melissa, if you live in California or not. You can type in the chat if you live in California, and I can specify my answer for you. But yeah, getting involved with, again, local nonprofits and volunteering your time is a great way to get involved. But I understand that not everybody has the time or the capacity to be able to do that. And so, you know, when you get connected with organizations that are doing work that you support, you can try to participate when they have action alerts, when they're asking you to, you know, write in a letter of support for a certain policy measure that's going to benefit mountain lions. You can, of course, donate. That's a very easy way. But of course, right now with the pandemic, we understand, and a lot of nonprofits understand that, you know, things are really tough right now. So if you can't donate today, you can donate your time. You could spread the word on social media on conservation issues that matter to you, because spreading the word is free. It just takes a little bit of time to do that. And also, if you have pets or domestic animals and you live in or around mountain lion habitat, to be sure to be a good neighbor to wildlife and protect your pets. Bring them in at night. Don't leave them unsupervised outside. And when you're out on the trail, be a good steward. You know what to do if you see a lion or a coyote or a bobcat or a mountain lion. And just be prepared when you're on the trail or at home to encounter wildlife. Anything else? Did I miss anything? Cheryl or Daniela, feel free to jump in there.
I have one thing that I do personally to help conservation, or at least mountain lions and other wildlife in California. I'm constantly bringing up the conversation about rodenticide. So like with my friends, and they're probably sick of hearing it. I'm like, don't use rat poison. So, I mean, I just kind of work it into the conversation. I don't know.
Totally.
Framing a conversation about wildlife kind of gets people interested. And that's what I always try to do.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Talking to your family, friends, neighbors about issues that matter to you. I love it. So let's see here. I think we have some more questions. Andrew, 𝐀𝐻, very lucky to have you as a volunteer, and we love your work. Thanks, Andrew. Korinna, is there a way to track in real time the actual locations in the Socal area? So that's a good question. That's going to be dependent upon the project. So who is the one who is paying and managing those collars that are on mountain lions? Depending on the project, they basically program collars in a certain way. And so depending on what research questions they're trying to get at, some studies have like fine scale movement data where they need GPS fixes very frequently throughout the day. But a lot of projects, I'll say, they only do like 2 or more GPS fixes in one 24-hour period. So for example, maybe the scientists get a GPS coordinate, a GPS fix during the daytime to know where the lions are at during the day, and then one during the nighttime. And so scientists have access to that information, but there is no currently there's no like interactive web page that you can go to. And that's part of that is feasibility as well, but also a lot of it is also, you know, do we actually want to know the live fixes or GPS coordinates for mountain lions for their own safety? There are people who, you know, don't want mountain lions in their backyard or neighborhood, despite them living in mountain lion habitat. There are people who may go out there and want to try to poach a mountain lion or take a selfie with it. So there's very good and valid reasons why that information is not put in live time. However, especially on projects where they're using taxpayer money, you know, that's kind of like public information at a certain point. And so sometimes scientists will put out graphs of where, maps of where lions are, but the data is older, right? So you can still see where they're at and where they kind of hang out. Hope that answers your question. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Daniela. I so appreciate your time. Cheryl, thank you for doing the introductions, and shout out to Tabby. Tabby's our moderator in the chat today and making sure that we are addressing anybody who needs tech help. So thank you all for being here, and thank you everybody for participating. And for more information, you can go to cougarconservancy.org to follow our work.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you everyone for coming. I see a lot of familiar names in the chat here, so thank you. It means so much to me.
All right, everybody, have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.